Hi, and welcome back to the Town Bag Sew Along. Today is day 6, and this is going to be the final lesson of the Town Bag Sew Along. I know originally I had it scheduled as 7 lessons, but I realized that the last lesson is just threading the cord through the top of the bag, and I think we can add that on to the end of today so that you can finish up your bags and start using them. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so our bags have the straps attached, our pockets are in, we have put in our bar tacks, and we are ready to turn this into something that looks like a bag. So the first thing we're going to do is sew up the side seams, and we are using French seams for that. So fold your bag together so that the wrong sides are facing each other, and then we're going to align the side seams. We have this notch here. And we're going to pin down, there's a notch here as well. So we're just pinning that in place. And then the other side, same thing. Our notch here, notch at the bottom. Okay, then what we're going to do is head over to our sewing machine and sew along these sides from the bottom to the top using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now you're going to sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. You're going to stop at the notch. All right, so here you can see the notch, and we stopped sewing right there. Now we're going to just trim off the corner. We're going to be folding this open to create the French seam, and you can't fold it open if it's connected at the bottom. So you can see here, connected. If you try to fold it open, you're going to have like an angled piece. So just chop that right off. Now we need to press open our seam allowance. And since this is a corner, it can be difficult to get into, but you can see here, I'm using a point press. All you do is insert it into your bag. The point of the point press goes right into the corner, and you can easily press. Now we need to grade the seam allowance, which just means cutting the seam allowance in half, because this needs to tuck into another 3/8 inch seam allowance to create the French seam. And if we don't trim it back, it can stick out the side. Your seam's not going to be very neat. So that is why we trim this. As I mentioned in the first video, you can use duckbill scissors if you like. I find them very big and unwieldy. I have quite small hands, so I am not a personal fan, but a lot of people love them and swear by them, so maybe they're for you. So now you're going to repeat that for the other side. Now we're going to turn the bag inside out. So the wrong side is facing out. Get into those corners. Then we're going to press along the seam line here, making sure that the seam line falls directly to the side. It's not folding over to the front or the back, and press. Okay, so this is nice and flat. We are going to pop a few pins in here so it stays that way when we sew our next seam. And I'm just going to pin the two top layers together so they don't scoot around. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew another 3/8 inch seam allowance to enclose the seam we just sewed, the raw edges, and create the French seam. So for this, you're going to want to start at the lower edge and sew up. And then when you get to the notch, over the next 1/2 inch, you're going to just curve in here. So what that looks like with a pencil, you can draw this in if you prefer. So we have a 1/2 inch, so we're going to end here and 3/8 of an inch in. So you're just going to curve between these 2 points and then draw down. So again, it's harder to start here, I find. I like to start at the bottom and then work off. All right, so starting at the bottom, just do a little back tack. Sew up the side with your 3/8 inch seam allowance. And here we are approaching our notch, so we're just gonna swivel over here. And I do a bit of back tacking there because it is a stress point on the bag. And there you can see we have curved off. And from the inside, or this is the right side, it looks like this. So you're going to repeat that for the other side of the bag. So now that the bag is turned inside out, we need to form the gusset. So what we're going to do is grab the bag on both sides where the pocket is sewn down. You're just going to pull it out. So that creates this little triangle. And you'll notice that goes from one edge of the pocket to the other. It spans the bottom of the bag. So we're going to press this. And then I'm just going to put a few pins right through here to keep it stable while I sew this next seam. What we're now going to do is just sew a 1/4 inch away from this folded edge here through the gusset triangle, and that just anchors these 2 layers together when we sew the actual gusset. That way things don't move around, shift, and you get a really nice clean seam. So let's do that now. And you don't need to back tack this one. You're just going to sew one side to the other. Here you can see it's just stitched down just through the triangle gusset part. This edge of the bag is still free, the bottom of the bag. Now what we're going to do is take this triangle, fold it down, and tuck it inside of the pocket here. just like that. Now, when we sew the gusset, you can sew just through both of these layers, but you'll have a little seam on the outside of the bag that will cause a little lip here. So what we do to avoid that, make sure it's tucked in there nice and neat. And then you're going to pin just through the bottom of the bag and the gusset, not catching the side. So you just stick your hand in there, pin through the two, make sure it's still aligned nicely. And one more. Okay, so here you can see pinned through the bottom, side is free. We are going to go and sew this down through the triangle and the bottom of the bag, avoiding the side, and that will create a really nice clean edge. So we have found that the easiest way to sew this gusset is to turn your bag inside out. Then we're going to go over to our machine and we're going to sew directionally from the center out, then again from the center out, because it's easier to sew into a corner than it is to sew from a corner. And this is going to be a bit of a thick seam with the canvas in the kits and the original canvas that was used for the bags, but it's nothing my machine can't sew through. If you're having trouble, there's a few things you can do. You can steam this seam, that loosens the fibers up a bit. You can also take a hammer and hit the seam. That will help break down the fibers a bit, and you'll be able to sew through it more easily. Now, I find it easiest to use the free arm on my machine, which means I've taken off the little table piece. Again, my bag is inside out. I'm just gonna slide the bag underneath my foot. Here you can see. Here's our seam allowance, or our side seam. So I'm going to start there. And then I'm just going to sew 1/8 of an inch in from the side seam. Here you can see we're working towards our corner. And I apologize, it is very hard to sew this so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to sew right into that corner. Hopefully you can see this. A little back tack, and you can pull that out. Now for that, we're going to again slide our bag under, but the bulk of the bag is going to need to be to the right instead of to the left, so we can sew into the corner. So here we are. Line up our 1/8 inch. Remove our pins. And right to the stitching line. Here you can see it is all the way across now, and it was just easier to sew into the corners than from a corner, so that's why we do that. And here's how it looks on the inside of the bag. We have caught the folded edge here, and our gusset is complete. So you're just going to repeat these steps for the other side of the bag. Okay, so our gussets are complete, and the last thing we have to do is thread our cord through the channels at the top of the bag. So what I'm going to do is take a piece of tape, and I'm just going to tape the end of the cord while I feed it through. You don't need to do this. I'm just giving you guys an option. Then I'm going to take a safety pin and put it through the cord. Take your safety pin with your cord, and you're just going to put it through one side of the bag and move the safety pin through the channel. And here it comes out the side. Pull the cord, so there's just a bit hanging out the other side. Then you're going to flip your bag over, and we're going to put the cord through the other channel. So same thing. There's a little tool called a bodkin that is helpful as well. Mine is at work, so I do not have it for this video, but also I like to demo with a safety pin because that's something that everyone has laying around. But the bodkin, you grab it onto the end of the cord, and it's a little longer to pull through, a little more to grab onto. Okay, so these are both coming out this side now. So what I'm going to do is tie an overhand knot. So I'm just going to pull this out of the way. You can take your tape off if you want. So you're just going to take your two cords, bring it around your hand, bring the ends through, and tie it. And just pull it as tight as you can, nice and tight. And I like to leave a little cord at the end of my knot so I can just get it really tight. Then I take my scissors and I trim it off. Now this is, halfway done, but pulling on this doesn't cinch your bag closed. So we need to do it with the other cord. So again, I have taped this. Just going to feed my safety pin through. And now we're going to start on the opposite side of the bag. So that way we have a pull cord at both sides to cinch the bag. So here we go. There we are out one side. Pull the cord, flip the bag over, and keep pulling the cord through. Now we're on the other side, the other channel. I always find the first cord slightly easier because it does cinch the top a slight amount, and then I'm not as good at pulling it through the second time. Especially, it's a lot easier if you have it up. So do that yourself. Pulling it across with the bag flat for the camera is not my forte. And there we go. So now again, pull these, get a little extra over, through, pull, nice and tight. And then I just trim off the extra. So it's likely when feeding the second rope through, your first cord got a little bit off center. So you can easily fix that by just cinching and uncinching the bag a few times. And that is it. That is finished. Okay, so that is it for the town bag sew along. You have created your very own town bag. I am so proud of you all. I hope you had a really good time sewing along with us and you learned a few tips and tricks and you just feel in general more confident about sewing bags and working with this type of fabric and notions. So if you have sewn your town bag and you're thinking, why stop now? Let's sew a few more project bags. We also have full video sew-alongs for the field bag and the stow bag, and those are great project bags. And the small stow and the field bag will both fit inside your town for further project separation. You can find those full sew-alongs on our YouTube channel, or links on our website will direct you to the sew-alongs. Again, I hope you had fun and you learned a little something new. And thank you so much for joining along. I had a great time leading you through this, and I will see you back here next time for our next sew along. So thank you and bye-bye.